Why don't you just start by explaining what the problem is as you see it, and the ways in which classified technologies are being used on targeted persons? Kind of a general introduction
Well,
to that.
from my experience, it seems to be a form of remote neural monitoring is one of the terms we use for it. The other term is psychotronic weaponry, weaponry that has been designed to interact with the human nervous system in order to remotely pick up on someone's neural network or EEG and not only receive that and monitor it, but manipulate it and place it back into the victim to control their emotions or control their actions or bodily functions for that matter. The other more recent term we have for that is EEG heterodyning or EEG cloning. The difference between EEG heterodyning and EEG cloning would be, let's say, me remotely receiving your EEG and then duplicating it and putting that in another person to give them your same thoughts or feelings or physical reactions. EEG heterodyning would be receiving your EEG, manipulating it to put it back inside your head to give us a desired physical reaction or emotional reaction.
And exactly, I mean, give me an idea of how this technology works. I mean,
I wish I could give you a good example of how it works. I know Robert Duncan worked on some of the projects. I mean, he claims it's a very complex, mathematical situation that does it. The bottom line, though, at least from what I've been told, is that it's mostly based on Robert Malik's patent of remote neural monitoring, in which he found that if you shoot two dissimilar frequencies into the human brain, that the human brain will actually create an interference frequency as it tries to duplicate the two dissimilar frequencies, and the interference frequency that gets transmitted back out of your brain can be decoded and your EEG digitally manipulated out of that. Now, and that patent came out in like 1974. It was Malech, Robert Malik. And it was actually invented as a way to monitor pilots. That way, if you had a pilot that was falling asleep or a pilot that was starting to hallucinate, they could see that remotely and then stimulate the pilot to wake him up or to bring him out of a delusion, especially fighter pilots that are on, continuously long missions. It appears to be mostly being done in that way. Now, one of the more scary things that's come to light lately is the way the NSA is monitoring our computer systems. And they're doing that with continuous wave radar, or CWR. In lately there's lately there's been a program of interdiction where the computers and smartphones and things are actually gotten before they actually reach our shores for sale and are being implanted with a particular type of implant. One of them is called a cottonmouth, at least for PCs, and that's a small chip that actually goes into the cord between the computer and the monitor. And when that chip is hit with continuous wave radar, it will begin to transmit up to 8 kilometers away whatever data is being sent from your computer to your screen. It may be monitored in real time, or it may just be data that's collected, automatically without anybody actually watching it. But one of the thoughts that we have is that it might be continuous wave radar being used on humans as well. And if you see Jacob Applebaum, some of his speeches and reports and exposure on this, he kind of alludes to some of Snowden's releases that the same technology that they're using on computers, they may be actually using on human systems as well.
so Snowden leaked a lot of this information about the gathering of information and sensitive private information of individuals through cell phones and computers and even your search engines and anything that you do on social media networks. But what you're talking about is like EEG, monitoring that is able to translate the brain patterns into verbal language, like English, and then put it back in your brain. Is that right? Or
Yeah, essentially, yeah, and that is by definition what EEG heterodyning is. Like I said, it would be taking your basic EEG, receiving it, manipulating it, and spitting it back to you. And one thing that we found a long time ago within a lot of the neurologic studies is if you bombard the brain long enough with a certain frequency, the brain receives that frequency and adapts to that frequency and begins to operate in that frequency. And specifically with Malik's patent, if you're using two dissimilar frequencies and you get one hemisphere of the brain operating at one frequency, the other hemisphere at a different frequency, they create an interference frequency. And we know the brain transmits. That's why we can actually look at an EEG. Now, traditionally in medicine, we're using it with leads on the scalp, and that was the whole point of his patent, is that you no longer actually had to have leads on the scalp, that it could be done remotely with radio frequency.
wow.
Now that's not in sum the total of what these victims are experiencing. That's the monitoring and maybe some of the emotion manipulation. Um, Also, you can control the brain into making the body twitch or making the body do just about anything, since everything's controlled by the brain. But there also seems to be a directed energy component to the victimization of these people, because most of them are also complaining, of eye burning, skin burning, and what would appear to be microwave energy based weapons, body heating, most of those techniques used for sleep deprivation. Almost all of the victims that I've spoken to complain that the attacks seem to be worse at night and seem to be geared at actually sleep depriving them.